Reddit, what's the worst thing you've accidentally let slip in conversation? As part of my job, I go to different offices in my company and speak about various work-related topics. I am also a member of AA. At a work meeting, where I knew perhaps 5 of the 100 attendees, I stood up and introduced myself saying, "Hi everybody. I'm name, and I'm an alcoholic." Once when I was having the talk with a soon-to-be ex, I dropped a ducking gum that immediately made me cringe. "I liked you before I got to know you." A friend heard this story and says, "AWW. That's cute. You liked her even before you knew her that well." Nope. It was that I stopped liking her after getting to know her. The soon-to-be ex fully understood the statement upon delivery. I was at my uncle's funeral and my cousin was having a hard time accepting his dad is really gone. He was asking if it was an early April's Fool prank the day before. And that day, he grabbed me, pointed at the corpse, and went, "It doesn't even look like him. He looks different. Maybe it's not even him. Don't you think he looks different?" I'm awkward enough already in most normal situations. And my mind just went blank at this point. The first reply I blurted out was, "That's probably because he's decomposing. That's why he's kinda bloated right now." Accidentally told my mom that my dad planned on divorcing her. I thought it was just understood. That was a rough day after that. Damn. I mean, she had to be in some serious denial to not have noticed. Right? But I feel for you. That's a rough spot to find yourself in. And as soon as it hit me, she didn't know I'd be all like flailing arms and up. Surprised art. Accidentally told someone in a job interview I'd spent a week in a psychiatric ward. Still got the job. My large uncle once wiped a turd on my bathroom wall. I think he just stood up and turned and accidentally got it on the wall. Small bathroom, but who knows? In a hoe. His kids came over a week or two later after having been estranged from us for years. Trying to lighten the awkward mood, I told a story about my uncle wiping poop on the wall. How crazy. So gross, who does that? Completely forgetting the relationship between my uncle and cousins. My cousin just goes, "My dad wiped poop on the wall." Couldn't recover, so I just left the room for a while. I was once trying to score with a girl in the pub after a long relationship breakup. So my speaking to girls skills were a bit rusty. I was a bit nervous, so I ended up saying I love ducking dogs instead of "I ducking love dogs," and didn't notice. She understood that I was a dog rapist and left. So, one of the worst things you can do in basic training is call a female instructor sir. For obvious reasons. There were plenty who did this and were subsequently reamed. Well, I took it a step further and called my male instructor mom. "Did you seriously just call me mom?" Fortunately for me, I think he got more confused than anything and we had sheet to do, so there wasn't time to make my day hell. When I was in high school, it was common for your mom to be a response to pretty much any question. One day at school, my buddy asked what I was doing that night and I responded, "Your mom," forgetting that his mom had just died of cancer. I still feel bad 15 years later. I was having dinner with my parents and younger sister when I let it slip that Santa wasn't real. I honestly have no idea what I said or implied. But I will always remember the stares that could melt 1,000 candles coming from my parents' eyes when I looked up from my green beans. And then my sister ran from the room, crying. My dad got really drunk on a Saturday night when I was 5. And he came into mine and my brother's room. And he told us that Santa wasn't real. He was mad that he wasn't getting full credit for buying us things. And instead we were grateful to an imaginary person. My favorite thing about it, and why I remember it was a Saturday night, is because he said magic isn't real. If you think there is anything out there in this world, you're an idiot. Now go to bed. We have to be at church by 8 inches. I accidentally texted her the specs to her engagement ring while I was trying to send the specs to a family member who was asking after them. Well, at least there are worse ways to mess that up. At least it wasn't you telling them about how you couldn't marry them. I'm assuming everything is going fine still? Married for 7 months and counting. The mess up was about 2 years ago and I proposed 4 months later on Christmas Eve in front of my family. I got tricked into admitting to one of my best friend's very recent ex that he had cheated on her. I wouldn't have been talking to her at all. But she had a very extreme reaction to the breakup. She locked herself in their apartment and had been threatening to kill herself. At one point, she said, "You know he cheated on me. Right? I guess. So he did. Oops." I was attending my aunt's funeral and when I was leaving, her son told me to take good care of my parents. Out of habit I said, "You too." I felt horrible afterwards and still cringe at the memory to this day. Shoot man. I still cringe when I told the ticket seller years ago "you too" when she told me to enjoy my movie. So I can't even imagine how you feel. Years ago someone unknown called my cell phone and since I didn't get any spam calls back then, I answered. They clearly had the wrong number and we both laughed for a second. Then I said "see you later" and hung up. I still think about it to this day. I'm a teacher. I teach 6 and 7-year-olds. Doing a spelling test, the word is father. As in, Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's father. Cue most of the children shrieking as he. I felt a great disturbance in the force. As if millions of voices suddenly cried out in confusion and were suddenly more knowledgeable. I was once super drunk and casually mentioned that I had made a suicide attempt. Being drunk can be the perfect way to let people know what's up without the cringe factor. A guy I worked with for a couple years older brother killed himself. Fast forward a month and he comes to visit the restaurant we worked at together and somebody jokes. "Who orders a non-alcoholic beer?" What does stupid ducking me say? I would rather kill myself than drink a non-alcoholic beer. Instant shame. Regret. Horror. You name it. I've never felt so terrible saying anything in my life. My friend's dad died about a year ago. A month after it happened, we were drinking. And in my state of inebriation I said, "What you got going on for Father's Day?" He just looked at me and said, "Let's do some duckin' karaoke." Happened first week of college freshman year. In the dorms. Was chatting up this super cute girl with a couple of my newfound friends. I mentioned I had always wanted to play drums. And the girl said she could let me borrow her brother's. Wow. Okay, cool. Conversation keeps going. And something else. Like some mics. And again her brother had one I could borrow have. And then a third thing comes up that was her brother's that I could have, so me. Being me. Said, "Geez. You're giving all your brother's stuff away. What, did he die?" Ha ha ha. Yep. He did. Long story short. My best friend was engaged to a girl that I had slept with in the past. I was 18 at the time. We were in our 20s when they were engaged. I had no idea it was her. Keep in mind. Her, him, my wife, and myself hung out all the time. He was my best friend. One night at dinner we were talking about where we all used to work. Wait. You worked there? I worked in the building right next to it. When? Oh wow. So you worked there when I worked there. I once hooked up with a girl named Name from there. Then it all flooded and embarrassing. They got over it. But she ended up leaving him anyway over her being stupid. I can see her face the whole time you're working through the memory and she's like, "Is he going to say? Comma. I mean. I assume she remembered?" My grandparents separated before I was born. I'm 23 now, and when I was 6 or 7 my grandfather was getting married and I was to be the flower girl. Well, no one told my grandma wasn't supposed to know. So one day my family was at our house along with my aunt and uncle. And I mentioned how I couldn't wait to wear a pretty dress for the wedding. My grandma asked who was getting married. Grandpiers. I exclaimed. And that's how she found out. Oops. Yeah. You gotta be careful letting little kids know things that they're not supposed to tell people. I remember going to dinner for my mom's 40th birthday and I was about 10. We followed the host through the restaurant and into this one big room in the back. Somehow I ended up being the first one to walk through the door and I start looking at all of the people sitting at the tables in the room and realize that I recognize them and my eyes go wide. Next thing I know, my uncle, who was right behind me, has his hand over my mouth and picks me up and moves me to the side. Seconds later my mom walks through the door and the whole room yells, "Surprise." My dad and uncle knew I would have ruined the surprise, so I got to be surprised too. Not me, but when I was a kid my aunt let it slip that my parents didn't get married until well after I was born because they were forced into it by my grandparents. I was always told they married 18 months before me. They continued to lie 4 years after that until they divorced and I saw their actual wedding date on the paperwork. When I was 16, a girl I went to church with got pregnant out of wedlock. Gasp. The horror. The church was extremely judgy and very insular, so this was considered incredibly shameful. I lived with my grandmother, who was the church secretary, so I found out she was pregnant before it was public knowledge, and I was sworn to secrecy. Well, the night I found out, this girl picked me up to drive me to church. As I got in the car, all I could think was, "Don't say pregnant. Don't say pregnant." So of course the first thing I say is, "Hi, girl. How are you pregnant? Tonight? I mean, how are you tonight?" I slapped my hand over my mouth and just stared at her, completely horrified. All she said was, "I guess you know." Then, one time me and my friends were talking about the definition of cute. We said that cute things have to be small. One guy chimed in, "My pen 15 is small. I guess it's cute." I was so mortified. My best friend and I were talking while watching my kids play outside. I didn't realize they had come up to ask a question and we were talking about some not so good stuff that happened to us in Iraq and he said, "What about the dude you beat to death?" And I said, "It's a lot different than shooting someone." My 12-year-old said, "You killed someone?" And my oldest smacked him in the arm and said, "At least 2. Pat attention." That was a really awkward conversation to have with them. I never planned on telling them what I did in the army. They knew I fought in the war but didn't know any specifics. Good news out of it though, now neither of them wants to join. For context, I'm a disabled combat veteran. Backstory: my best friend and I made out once. We realized it made things awkward and never spoke about it again. Fast forward to this last year. I just moved in with my boyfriend and asked if we could have a small housewarming party. My boyfriend asked who I wanted to have over and I said my best friend Mike. BF, who is Mike? Me, my best friend from high school. BF, oh, your best friend you made out with? Me, what? How did you know about that? BF, I was just kidding. He's very sarcastic and loves giving me a hard time about virtually anything. But I couldn't believe I let that one slip. It wasn't that bad, but it was pretty embarrassing to say the least. I asked the wife during an intimate moment if she remembered the lap dance she gave me to a song that came on Spotify. Then went on to describe the lingerie she was wearing and the way her perfume smelled. After getting an "I should dare you and bury your bones in the garden" stare down, I realized that it was not my wife in this memory and my night was ruined. My vasectomy despite not having kids. I don't mention it often in public because it's personal information, but also because the responses are unpredictable. The most stupid response I've had so far was a guy telling me to get a reversal because the world is so full of stupid people and you'd have smart kids to help balance it out. As if I was Einstein. At a wedding, I met some guy back at the hotel that was a cousin of the bride, and I was on the groom's side. We were in the elevator when I started to talk about how I was banging the bride's sister a while back. As soon as I said it, I realized that the sister was also the guy's cousin. I wasn't about to talk myself out of this one, so as soon as the elevator doors opened I was out of there. One time I was talking to my friend and her boyfriend, who was recovering from heroin use abuse, and I was telling them how great the movie Oslo The 31st of August is. They asked me what it's about and I said, oh yeah, it's about this heroin addict. I realized as the word slipped out of my mouth that I shouldn't have mentioned it. They asked me how it ended and I told them he died. I ruined a surprise birthday party. Was hanging out. Ran into the birthday girl. Wished her happy day of birth and said I'd see her later at so and so's house. Turns out she didn't know. And wasn't supposed to know. I'm a jackass. We were at a party after a university music department concert. I was standing behind a tenor voice major at the bar when he asked the bartender for a soda. The bartender pulled the tab and was about to pour it into a glass when the student said emphatically, for all nearby to hear, I prefer to take it in the can. At which point I said, I'm sure not many will be surprised to learn of your preference. Not me. But a girl I was dating once had told me she lost her virginity to me. Then, a few months later, we were hanging out with one of her friends and she told a story about a guy who she had slept with and then told her he had better. So she was either A. cheating on me, capital B, lied about losing her virginity, or C. making shit up. She immediately realized what she had said and after a long while went apologized and admitted to cheating on me. 2 years ago, I was talking in a group with basically the girl of my dreams. And my buddy, who is a football player, started talking about his weight and asked how much us guys weighed. And I'm a cross-country runner so I'm fairly skinny. I was like, oh, I'm really light. Like 115 pounds. I wouldn't be surprised if girl of my dreams weighs more than me. In my mind, I was thinking that since she was the next smallest person there, I would compare myself to her. Because we were both lightweight. But how it came out to her was, I called her fat straight to her face. Not me, but it affected me. This happened around this year. I'm gay and my father is super religious and super homophobic. I was out to my mother and sister about 2 years and after coming out to my mom she said to not tell your father, he'll try to kick you out but I won't let anything happen to you. So after hearing this I decided to come out to him once I'm out of the house. Fate had other plans as my sister told him by accident. Story short, he asked me if it was true. I said yay and I was temporarily kicked out until my mom came home and started looking for me. I was home in 2 days and super pissed. A friend told me and my wife about when she stalked a guy and did something creepy. I didn't know it was off limits and mentioned it at a party in front of her boyfriend who I didn't know was the guy she stalked earlier. There was no way she would have found a dead bat, put a stamp on it, address it to heaven, and drop it into 2 guys' mailboxes. I found out that it caused a lot of problems with the guy. Accidentally let my girlfriend know that the athletic top she loves on me actually belonged to one of my old friends with benefits. Now I can't wear it around her. When I made a joke to my friend about her pretending to drink on account of her being pregnant. Thing is, I wasn't supposed to know she was pregnant in the first place. Let alone she was pretending to drink, so our mutual best friend ended up taking one on the chin because of me.